haven't been here before, this is Alloy Personal Training. This is one of 3 Alloy Personal Training gyms we have here in St. Louis. So my name is John Farkas. I'm the owner here. Wes is our manager. When Matt kind of just randomly popped in one evening as we were setting up shop, we got to chatting, and really, I love what you guys are doing here, and I just wanted to, I offered to just help, and so really what we're going to talk about today is really just the foundations of strength training. So myself, I've been in the industry 22 years. This is all I know as an adult, and we're really just trying to focus on teaching strength training to anyone and everyone we can, and really just simplifying it. Fitness is very complicated and can be very complicated, so we're trying to simplify it. With what we're doing tonight, it's really just about trying to give you some really simple frameworks. One of the things that Matt wanted was to really just help give you guys the tools to succeed as far as to help work out, to help do some strength training, whether that's at home, at a gym, whenever you've got time. So, and that's really what we're going to try to accomplish. So I'm going to do my best to not bore you with any with too much, and then we'll actually get up, move around, and kind of like show you some stuff that you can actually like go and apply tomorrow. That's really the goal. So the 4, couple things we're going to talk about. First and foremost, the benefits of strength training. Then we're going to talk about some common mistakes to avoid. Then we're going to really just, again, put it all together. That's where the bulk of our time will be spent, is really just looking at like, okay, how can you actually, pick up a few things that you can go and use, again, tomorrow or later this week. So, again, to begin, I've got 4 gyms here in St. Louis, like I said, and I only say this to say that, like, this is my first rodeo, been doing it a while, and again, we work with people of all ages, shapes, sizes, and this is what we do. So strength training is our bread and butter, and it's like I said, it's what we're all about. So, looking at like in the most basic and elementary level, whether it's adults or for all the athletes here, when we're thinking about strength training, in my opinion, and of course I'm biased, there's virtually no better thing you can do to set yourself up for success. Honestly, not just with biking, but truly like almost in life. Like if it was up to me, this is something you should learn in school, because it's so foundational to just everything you do. It will improve, it will increase your strength, your endurance. It will help you focus better, whether that's in school or in the job, in the future. It will improve you mentally and help improve your mental health. It decreases the risk of injury, whether that's from like falling down a set of stairs or like on your bike, or again, whether we're talking racing or just in everyday life. I mean, the benefits here: increased bone density, less likely to break a bone, decreased body fat. There's just blood sugar, decreasing your risk of diabetes. Again, the benefits of strength training are endless, and it truly transfers over to every aspect of your life. There's no end to this. So as it relates specific to sports, and as it relates specifically to what all of you are doing, this is a study that was put out in 2013, just talking about strength training for runners and cycling endurance performance. Again, basically to summarize, and I'll let your coach Matt here speak on this. Again, it just really, hopefully I don't have to sell you on the idea that like strength training will benefit you so much in your performance in every way possible. There's 2 studies in here in particular that I'm going to reference. This first one just talked about the improved VO2 max, improved exercise economy. Again, in virtually in almost every metric you can track when it comes to performance, your strength training is positively impacted. Another study, more recent study from 2021, and this was interesting, and while there's still benefits to strength training, or the benefits are, there's no question about it. There's actually, this study in 2021 talks about how it may even be more beneficial for the females, the female cyclists in the room. So, and how just the summary of the study, and again, if you want the studies to dive into it even more, I'm happy to share them with you. But again, really talking about when we're looking at improving cycling performance, this study in 2021 is actually showing that it was even more beneficial for female cyclists. It's still very beneficial for male cyclists, but even more so for the competitive female cyclists. So for all those female cyclists out there, there's even more reason to do this. So I don't know, Coach Matt, if you want to touch on this for...
You go back to the slide
Yeah.
before that, and you know, you look at pretty much every metric of cycling performance that you can look over there on the left. Both your aerobic and anaerobic capacity, you know, the time to fatigue, you know, lactate threshold, all those things that we think about, and Coach Molesky can vouch for this too, but strength performance or strength training, you know, benefits all those different aspects. So why you wouldn't be using it as part of your training regimen is kind of crazy, right?
I agree with that. And again, what we're going to get into here in a moment is just like just the most simplified, basic ways that, again, what I told Coach Matt beforehand was, you know, my goal is that everyone can leave here, and no matter your situation, whether it's like at home, at a gym, at a school, whatever, like you can work out to benefit yourself and improve your performance here. So again, the research is, and there's a lot more research out there. These were just two different studies that we picked out. We each picked out one, and you know, these are just two different studies, but there's a long list of research out there that just shows the benefits of strength training. So when we're looking at, you know, 3 most common strength training mistakes you want to avoid, these are very foundational, but yet, again, I work out at a lot of different gyms around, and I still see these every single day. And so you might think like, oh yeah, you know, I know that, but you know, my question would be like, is that something that you're actually applying and using? So, because it's one thing to know some information, but it's another thing to apply it. So when we look at the 3 most common strength training mistakes we see, first and foremost, and this is probably one of the biggest ones, and it's just not warming up. And so I'm going to actually show you, Wes and I are going to show you guys a really simplified warm-up that will help you prepare and in an extremely time-efficient manner. We're talking like 5 minutes. So 5 minutes can go a long way, not just from reducing the chance of injury, but there's plenty of research out there that just shows by doing just a very basic warm-up, it's going to improve your performance as well. So just think about like right now, middle of winter, just like you would warm up your car for 5 minutes before you get in your car and drive, and you know it's better for your car. It's the same thing for your body. By spending 5 minutes warming up, elevating your body temperature, getting all the tendons and ligaments and muscles, getting the blood flowing, all that stuff is only going to benefit you and make you better. And then it's also a way to treat as mobility work. So how we define mobility is the ability to move your body through space. When you think about flexibility would mean if one of you were to lay on the ground and I was to bring your leg up as far as I can. That's not really active. That's me putting you in that position. So whereas we define mobility as your ability to control your body through that space. So when we think about how that transfers over to everyday life, mobility is a lot more important than flexibility because it's something that you can actively control. And not only will it help reduce the chance of injuries, it's going to help you perform better. So we want to look at, with our warming up, and you'll see that here in a few minutes, it's a great opportunity to get you, to help your body just move better and move more effectively. So the second most common mistake is focusing too much on the weight. And I see this all the time. I used to be guilty of it when I was younger working out myself. This was a huge mistake that I made. And so a couple different reasons why. First and foremost, it's you know, by focusing too much on the weight, it does increase the likelihood of injury. But if there's a reason that you should focus less on the weight and more on the technique, it's actually because it will and you may think this is counterintuitive, and in some ways it is, by worrying less about the weight, and by a lot of times, especially when you're getting started, by using less weight, it will actually make you stronger. And the reason I say that is because when you look at the strength, when you look at the kind of muscle contractions taking place, there's something known as the concentric phase, isometric phase, and eccentric phase. And so when we're looking at when strength is built in the body, it is generally built during the eccentric phase of the movement. All right, so if we're just going to look about, or if we're just going to talk about like your standard, we'll just use the bench press, all right? Because when I was just getting started working out, that was the only exercise I wanted to do was the bench press, right? So when you're doing the bench press, the eccentric phase refers to the phase where the muscles are lengthening. So if we're laying down doing a bench press, the muscles are lengthening when you're lowering the bar down to your chest. And so again, your muscles are actually getting stronger during the eccentric phase. So if we're applying that, again, just using the bench press, it doesn't really matter as much how much weight you can lift. It's more about how much weight you can control and lower down. That's actually going to help you get stronger. And I say that because, again, when we look at specific to like the bench press in this example, most of us are worried about like, well, how much weight can we push up? And while that definitely does matter, not as much as how much we can lower the weight safely and controlled. And so again, if you're looking at wanting to get stronger, one of the best ways you could get stronger, using just the example of the bench press, would be by, instead of worrying about how much weight you can press, focus on using a little bit lighter load and think about how long you can take to lower it down to your chest. And in doing so, you'll actually produce much greater strength gains over time. So again, focusing too much on the weight is a big mistake, because most people are thinking about, well, how much weight can I press? When in reality, it's actually not how much weight we can press or how much weight we can lift, it's how much weight we can control. And our muscles are actually getting stronger based on the amount of time those muscles are under tension, and in particular during the eccentric phase or lowering phase. Again, think of when you're lowering yourself down, or when you're lowering the bar down during a bench press, or if you're doing a squat, when you're lowering yourself down on a squat, or when you're lowering yourself down on a lunge. As I'm going down, that's the eccentric phase. That's when I'm actually getting stronger. Most people think of the hard part of the exercise as coming back up, and it is hard, but it's when we're actually like lowering down, that's when we're actually getting better. So both of them matter, but this will actually help you lead to greater strength gains faster. So the third mistake that we want to avoid is not training for function and performance. And so good examples of this, and again, just looking at like thinking about with a lot of the gyms that I go into, and you'll walk into a lot of gyms and you'll see a bunch of like machines everywhere. There's a reason you don't see a bunch of machines in here. And now while machines do have their place, when you're looking at the most efficient means of getting stronger, it's generally not the first place I would recommend starting. It's definitely better than not doing it at all. But again, if you're looking at like what's the best thing to help you improve the most in the least amount of time, this is really not where you should spend much time. And if you think about, again, if you're going into a gym and using a lot of machines, pushing and pressing and leg press and all that stuff, again, it's okay. It's better than not doing it. However, it's not as effective as doing more like functional-based strength training. So that's one of the things that, again, when we're using machines, I would look at that as like not being functional or not applying as much to your competitive when you're cycling. So another example of training for function would be looking at like unilateral versus bilateral movements. Unilateral meaning doing stuff on one leg versus bilateral would be like doing like a squat or a leg press. So if you think about it, when you're cycling, how often are you pushing with two legs at the same time? You're not. We're working, the legs are working independent of one another, right? Well, it's the same thing when you're training in the gym. You want to work those legs independent of one another. You want to incorporate more unilateral movements or movements on one leg. Again, if you were doing a squat or something on two legs, it's okay, but I wouldn't want to exclusively do that. So you want to incorporate some movements that are more unilateral movements where we're using one leg and one arm. Not only does that transfer over because it's more functional when you're competing, but it's also better just because when you're doing more unilateral movements, it forces you to use a lot of the small stabilizer muscles in your legs. When you're doing same thing with your upper body movements by doing some unilateral one arm movements, it's important because then, again, you're working on these small stabilizer muscles through the shoulders, upper back, and core. It's more effective because it works a lot your core as well. So if you're doing exercises on one leg, not only are you working that leg better, but you're having to stabilize all these muscles through your hips and your core, and there's a lot more stuff happening than just there's a lot more muscles being activated. So again, it gives you a lot more bang for your buck. So not only are you working more muscles, so is it more applicable, but it transfers over to your sport more because again, when you're cycling, you're not pushing with two legs at the same time. At least I hope not.
Yeah,
So,
John, to add to that, as mountain bikers, we're riding rough trail, we're moving the bike all around, you've got to have all those core muscles stabilized, right? Otherwise, late in a race, you're not going to be able to have control of the bike the way you want to. So these unilateral or single leg or single side movements are really important.
It makes a huge difference. It will help you out so much. One of the last benefits that I'll mention on this specifically is, let's just say you're working out at home, or if I'm, sometimes I work out at home, sometimes I work out when I'm traveling on the road, or I'm really in a hurry. One of the other benefits of doing more unilateral movements or movements on the one leg is if I do a squat right now, all right, I'm squatting with all 200 pounds. So roughly each leg is having about 100 pounds of resistance, right? Because I'm splitting my body weight in two. Well, if I'm doing those exercises at home where maybe I don't have a ton of weights, the cool part is I can now do that same squat on one leg, and now I have all 200 pounds on one leg. So the neat part is unilateral exercises are also nice because you don't need as much equipment. You don't need as much weight because you've just literally went from 100 pounds per leg to 200 pounds per leg. And so I can switch to doing one leg movements. And now, again, if you were trying to do some stuff from home, you can challenge yourself more without having, even if you don't have weights there. Or if maybe it's like, well, I only have like a couple sets of weights at home, or I don't have any weights at home. That's okay. Now you can still do a lot of stuff, and it's going to challenge you more because you're using your entire, your resistance is your entire body weight on one leg as opposed to two. So the last mistake along the lines of not training for function and performance is only targeting certain muscle groups. So, and what I would say to that is part of it is doing a lot of the unilateral movements that we talked about, where you're using all your core muscles and you're using a little bit of everything. But one of my physical therapists by the name of Greg Cook, who works with, he made his name by working with a lot of people getting prepared for the NFL Combine. So he works with the highest level athletes, on the planet. And something that he said to me once was that the front of the body looks good and the back of the body performs good. And so the idea is most people, when they go to the gym and when they work out, they're worried about working their biceps, their abs, their chest, and everything that you can see in the mirror. When in reality, if you look at performance, and this applies to cycling as well, it's having strong, hamstrings, glutes, back muscles. It's having the back of the body will go a long way towards helping you perform good. And so, again, most people tend to target the muscles you can see, or they target like the major muscle groups, and they tend to neglect some of those other like small stabilizer muscles, which is, think of it as like building a house on sand. We want to strengthen all those small stabilizer muscles because that's going to help you, that's going to build a solid foundation that you can then build strength on top of. Another way to look at this is an analogy that a different physical therapist shared with me is like if you're trying to build strength and if you're working out and you don't have all those strong stabilizer muscles, if you haven't built those up, it's like trying to shoot a cannon out of a canoe. And the idea, it won't work. So you need that solid foundation and you need those strong stabilizer muscles. And so that's why it's important to have those strong muscles as opposed to just working on like certain, some of the bigger muscle groups that we tend to think of. So those are, like I said, those are the biggest three mistakes that we want to avoid. Now what we're going to do is actually get into kind of the fun stuff. I'll quit boring you guys. So now we're going to talk about more how do we put it all together, all right? And how like this is more like now what can we actually do and walk away with? So there's really three strength training principles that on the most basic level I think are very important to know and to think about. So the first one is, if it hurts, don't do it. Now, let me provide some context here. I didn't say if it's uncomfortable, don't do it. You know, there's a level of discomfort that comes with strength training, and that's totally acceptable. This is more, we're talking about pain here. And this is something, if it's like, oh, I feel a shooting pain in my knee, then it's probably not, you know, there's probably another exercise that's more appropriate. So this is something that like we would have to look at on a case-by-case basis. And Wes, if you have a specific injury that you would want, you know, to ask some questions about, Wes is your guy. He'd be happy to answer those for you after we wrap up. But again, you know, our first principle here is really just if it hurts, don't do it. And by that I mean pain. You know, if your shoulder hurts every time you try to press a dumbbell over your head, probably, you know, it's probably not something you should be doing. So again, I already mentioned this, kind of looking at like the front of the body versus the back of the body. The back of the body being prioritized the posterior chain. So this is the back of the body. So when we look at our strength training, most people think about like doing like, you know, leg presses and chest presses, when we really need to prioritize the back of the body. So another way to look at this is if you think about how many of us go through life all day on our phones or driving and sitting in school and everything, we're always hunched over like this. So we want to strengthen the back of the body because it's healthier for the shoulders, it's healthier for the low back, it will keep you moving so much better and it'll be more likely to keep you pain-free. And then the last thing is the idea of train movements, not muscles. All right, and so what I mean by that is we don't want to look at like, oh, this is a bicep, this is a lat muscle, a deltoid. All right, because muscles don't work in isolation. If you ever get the opportunity to, I would suggest, you know, it's really neat to, when you get older, go into like a cadaver lab or something to where you can see how the body actually works. And when you look at how the body works, everything's connected. And so you don't really isolate muscles at all. So, kind of a volunteer, one of you guys? Come on now. Who's up? All right, here we go. So, all right, we got a volunteer. So here's the only example I'll use. All right, I appreciate it. So, all right, so we're gonna stand up right here, and so here's the idea of like someone that thinks like, all right, I'm not gonna isolate any muscles here. All right, so I want you to only use your bicep muscle. All right, and I want you to put your left hand right here. So put your left hand right there, and then I want you to pick, all right, so I only want you to use your bicep though. Don't use any other muscles. Okay? Now, do like a bicep curl, push up. Okay, relax. Do you feel your muscles that kick on? Mm-hmm. I told you not to use them. So even on something as simple as that, the most basic movement, again, it just goes to show like our body doesn't work like in individual muscles. Everything works together. So he goes to do a bicep curl, and he's using his core. And yeah, of course. So I'm sorry I set you up for failure. I knew you couldn't do it because it's impossible. So again, the idea is like we can't work our muscles in isolation. Everything works together. So we have to, again, we want to train movement patterns, not like just working a bicep or a tricep or anything like that. So, all right. So first things first, and don't worry, now everyone gets to get up. So, but what we're going to walk through is, again, just kind of like walking through like a full workout, and then at the very end, I've got some different, I've got like a template that we can send you that if you want to like, you know, print this out and write it down, you're more than welcome to. So that way, if you want something that you can like have it and take it with you, some examples, you're more than welcome to. But what we're going to do, we're going to go through just a real brief warm-up. Don't worry, I promise no one's going to break a sweat other than me. So But this is just showing you like how we can get all these muscles firing in a very, in a minimal amount of time. All right, so go ahead and, if we're gonna participate, go ahead and hop on up here. So, yeah, we'll just set some of these chairs out of the way real quick. So, all right, so what we're gonna do, again, we're gonna do something just the most basic, fundamental warm-up. You don't need any equipment. You can do this from home, so there's no excuse whatsoever. So our first exercise we're gonna do, and we've got 5 of them here. If you do these 5 exercises, you're warming up the majority of the muscle groups here. We're gonna do what's called a single leg hinge with an overhead reach. Now Wes is gonna demonstrate for you here. Now if you notice this, you can see his like ankle, knee, hip, all those small muscles are firing. We were just talking about all those stabilizer muscles. Now you're seeing in action, all right? His ankle, knee, hip, it's all working. The back of his hamstrings, he's stretching out. When he reaches overhead, he's now working all those muscles in his upper back and shoulder. I mean, if you think about really warming those up, think about when you're getting ready to compete, like how important it is to have even your shoulder, not just your legs, but we want to warm up your shoulders, we want to warm up your core, we want to warm up everything. So, all right, the only rule here, don't stand right in front of someone where you're going to kick them in the head. That's all I ask. So, or if you do, don't say you weren't warned. So, all right, so we're going to start right here. We're just going to do we're going to do like 5 of these on each leg. All right? So we're just going to do 5 of these standing on the right leg, and just think about reaching in front of you, slow and steady. There you go. Yeah, reaching in front of you. That's it. Yeah, just nice and slow. Again, we're going to do 5 of these, nice and slow. Reach in front. Now again, if your balance is off, then just don't worry about hinging quite so much of the hips. There you go. If you want to make it more challenging, you can reach and hold it for a few seconds. You don't have to. That's okay. Do what you're comfortable with. All right, but again, just think about that. Now, when you do this, one other thing to think about, don't open your hips up. So you don't want to do this. All right? You want to think about that leg that's in the air, keeping that hip down like this, not like this. So keep that hip down. Don't let your hips open up. When you do that, if you don't open your hips up, you'll probably feel it stretching a little bit more in the back of the leg. So again, this is a great exercise. It doesn't require any equipment. It's great for the ankles, the knees, the hips, the shoulders, the hamstrings. We got a lot of good stuff going on. Congratulations. I don't think anyone got kicked. That's awesome. So, all right, now our second exercise here is what's called a reverse lunge with an overhead reach. Again, we're trying to use as few exercises as possible to warm up as many muscles as possible. We're all about efficiency. So, yep. So, he's doing a reverse lunge. Now we're still warming up the lower leg here, but we're doing it a little bit differently. Now we're warming up the knees and the quads a little bit more. Still warming up. Yep, still warming up, opening those hips up. So when you step backwards here, you're really opening that hip up. That's super important with as much time as you're spending on your bike. All right, when you're sitting on your bike for extended periods of time, that's really tightening up. That can tighten up the front of those hips. So what are we doing here? We're going to do 5 on each side, yep. So just reaching back or stepping back, reaching overhead. That's it. It doesn't matter if you alternate legs or do them all on one side. Either way. But again, this is great because now we're opening those hips up. We're opening those shoulders up. Think about how you're spending all that time on a bike. We want to open everything up here. So that's 2. Number 3. So again, we're doing something a little bit different. There's a little less movement on the lower body here, but Wes is really opening his hips up here. This is super important with your guys in your cycling. So, and then he's doing what we call a wall slide. So think about taking your elbows and your palms and like pressing them behind you. So you're really opening your shoulders up. So what you're going to do is get in this stance right here. Now, if you have any knee issues, you can keep this leg straight. All right? So if you have any knee issues, any parents that want to do this, if you got any knee issues, just keep that leg a little bit more straight. Or like I said, you can bend it down just a little bit, and then you're just right here. All right? So we're going to do 10 of these wall slides, and then switch legs and do 10 more. Just nice and easy. On that, when you're sliding those palms up, really think about going nice and slow. We're going to go like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. That's it. So just nice and slow. This is great for opening the shoulders up. That's it. We're opening the shoulders up. We're opening the hips up. All right. Good stuff. The more you bend those knees, the more challenging it's going to be. So you can dictate like how hard or easy you want to make it. All right. Our next one, we call a Spider-Man stretch with internal rotation. So there's 2 ways you can do this. So you can start in a push-up position and then bring one knee up just like that and then straighten your leg out. Oh yeah, it's possible. It's possible. Let's see it, guys. I know you can do it. Look at that. Bring one leg up. So here's the trick. So go ahead and put. So here's the trick. On this leg, try to keep this foot flat on the ground, on that front leg. And then if you want to make it harder, there you go. You have to straighten that leg up. The more you drop your hips, the harder, the more you're going to stretch everything out. And then turn into the front legs. So turn into the front knee. There you go. That's it. Yeah. And then think about trying to take that hand towards the ceiling. That's it. Yeah. Take that. That's right there. Yep. Opening those shoulders up. There you go. Yeah. Opening those shoulders up. Perfect. Yeah. This one's tough. This one's no joke. Stuff. And then the last one, it's the simplest of the 5, what we just call a pogo hop right here. All right, so it's just warming the bottom of the feet up, the ankles, the knees. We're just going to do 20 of these real quick. Just a nice, simple hop. There you go. Perfect. Cool. Awesome. So, and again, you guys can get a copy of this at the end if you want. But just these 5 exercises right here, if you think about it, how much we warmed up the ankles, the knees, the hips, the shoulders, all the major muscle groups. So that it could be, your warm-up could be something as simple as that. All right. So once we get through the warm-up, now we have 6 primary movement patterns that we look at. All right, this is what Wes is doing with folks all day, every day, right here. These are the 6 main things that, again, if you think about making sure you target all the major muscle groups in the body, this is what we mean by that. So the first movement pattern is probably the one that people are most familiar with, which would just be our pushing. And so that would just be like a standard push-up. So we've got our standard push-up here. All right. Now, if push-ups aren't your cup of tea, we could also go kneeling or show them the eccentric and then kneel. So here's kind of a modified. So you could lower yourself down, go regular down and then kneel to back. So we could go lower yourself down and then kneel and then push. So if like regular push-ups, if you're like, man, I can't do 10 push-ups, then it's like, okay, we've got a modified version right here. So let's go ahead and see it, guys. So again, now, remember, when you do this, here, all right, here's my challenge to you. Take 2 to 3 seconds when you're lowering yourself down. Oh, yeah. Oh, big difference here. Yeah. 2 to 3 seconds lowering down. And then the last thing, think about keeping your body in a nice straight line, right? You don't want your hips dropping down too far. Now remember what we talked about earlier, that whole eccentric phase where we were talking about, kind of going through the range of motion. When you're lowering yourself down on a push-up, that's when you're actually getting stronger. It's the opposite of what you would think. So when you're doing push-ups, if you want to get more out of it, slow down on the way down. If you want to come up fast, that's totally cool. But go slow on the way down and it will help you get stronger faster. So our first movement pattern is our pushing movements. Our second one is our pulling movements. We'll just do a one-arm row. So now you could use a dumbbell, you could use a kettlebell, there's some stuff at home you could use as well. So Wes is going to demonstrate here just a one-arm row. So super simple. All right, now if you said, well, John, I don't have any weights at home, I would say you could also use some sort of resistance band that, again, really basic. And with this, you could get like a simple resistance band. This would be option 2, and do something like this. What if you said, well, John, I don't want to do one of those? I still got something for you. Does everyone have a towel at home? Yeah. No. All right. No? We'll work on it. So we'll figure it out. So if you have a towel at home, you can also you grab my jacket out of there. So you could also use a towel as a pulling movement. All right? Something super simple. Again, just a normal standard bath towel. All right? What that would look like, I'm going to use my jacket, which I would at home normally not recommend doing, but I didn't bring a bath towel with me. So you could do this as easily as sitting down, put a bath towel on your foot, and then pull this to you. It's still a pulling movement right here. All right? So again, the idea is, the whole point is there's no excuses to not work out and to not do strength training. All you need is a towel. So far, and a floor. If you guys have a floor at home, we're good with push-ups. If you have a towel at home, we're good with our rows. So I think we're 2 for 2. So our third movement pattern, and so we've got a couple examples here, would be either a deadlift or a lunge. So Wes is going to show you what a deadlift looks like. So notice how his back is flat. He's not hunched over. His back's in a nice neutral position. The kettlebell's right between his feet. Now you could use a kettlebell, you could use a dumbbell. There's a lot of other options as well. But the point being, you don't have to get super complicated. All right? With our lunges, we've got 2 different we've got many, but 2 primary lunge variations that you could use. One would be a reverse lunge, where kind of like that warm-up, you're stepping back. You could do this. You could hold a weight if you have it at home. You could hold a gallon jug of water, which you could buy for $1, weighs 8 pounds. You could hold a small child, a dog. My dog loves being held when I do lunges. Not really, she doesn't. But you could do a lunge stepping backwards. You could also do what we call as a forward lunge, where you would literally just be stepping forward, all right? Or a walking lunge, like either one of those. So we can go reverse lunges, we can go forward lunges. If it was me, I would suggest do them both. Do one day, one the next day. So mix it up. Again, you don't have to overcomplicate it. All right? Our next exercise, or next movement pattern, is our knee dominant movements here. All right, now, most of us are probably familiar, we've seen some sort of squat variation. So Wes is just going to do a standard, what we call a goblet squat. Again, you could hold a weight right here at the chest. You don't have to. And if you're just getting started, I wouldn't worry about it. You could fill a backpack up with books. We could do a goblet squat. Or we could do a step up right here. Again, with or without weight. You don't necessarily have to use weight on all of these, especially if you're just getting started. And if you do need to add resistance, again, you can get creative around the house. So we've got our squats and our step-ups for our knee-dominant movements. These are, now there's two more, but these are our primary 4 movement patterns, all right? In every workout, you should do something from one of these, at least one of these 4. Our pushing movements, and if you think about it, we're working our upper body. Pushing movements is working our upper body, everything kind of on the front of the body. Our pulling movements, we're working everything on the back of the body, all right? And then our hip-dominant movements, working, like I said, it's more like a hinging type movement. We're working the hips, a lot of glute and hamstring work. And then our knee-dominant movement is working more the front of the legs. So if you notice, we've got 2 upper body movement patterns, 2 lower body movement patterns. 2 for the front of the body, 2 for the back of the body. So we kind of divided the body up into 4 quadrants. All right, so again, we would incorporate this into every workout. We then have 2 different types of core movements. All right, now, so when it comes to working your core, again, think about what I was talking about, shooting a cannon from a canoe. All right, your core is your foundation. All right, it's the foundation on a house. All right, it's what's going to allow you to lift heavier objects. It's going to improve your performance with cycling. Having a strong core will transfer over to improving pretty much everything you do. All right, without a weak core, your body basically it cannot generate power, it cannot generate force. All right, so here's the thing that I will, as far as the core goes, if there's one thing to take away from this, it's that the primary function of the core is to prevent unwanted movement. All right, so I need one more volunteer. All right, we're right here. Noah, thank you, Noah. All right, so Noah, all right, the primary function of the core is to prevent unwanted movement. All right, now 2 different ways that would apply. It would be if whether it was like a person or an object, if I was to push him, he's going to use his core muscles. So go ahead and step forward just a bit. So if I push him, he has to use his core muscles. Feel your core kind of kicking on there? Those core muscles are kicking in to prevent that from happening. That's what the core is designed to do. It's to prevent unwanted movement, whether that's like me pushing him, or if he was to push if he wanted to push whatever this is, a box or anything, if he was to push me, he has to use his core so that he can stabilize and then apply more force. Thank you. So that's all about preventing unwanted movement. All right? How we do that through 2 different ways. We do that through what we call anti-extension movements and anti-rotation movements. All right? So when you think about working your core, again, this is probably one of the best things that you could apply here. You're going to be a lot stronger if you do fewer like crunches and sit-ups, which is what people think of when they're doing their core. Crunches and sit-ups, I would do less of that and more of this. All right, anti-extension means like when I was pushing on Noah, he didn't just like fall backwards. That was kind of like an anti-extension exercise. It was almost like what I would refer to as like a standing plank, because he was not allowing me to push him back. He was using his core muscles. So with an anti-extension, we're preventing extension in our lumbar spine. All right, so what that looks like, that could be like a plank. So where if Wes is using his core muscles now. If he wasn't, his hips would just collapse to the floor. So he has to use his core muscles to prevent him from going into extension. Hence the name anti-extension. All right? There's other things we could do. You want to do a roller? Just with the, we'll go with the foam roller rollout. So this would be like one of many variations of what we call a rollout, where he's just pushing his elbows out and coming back in. Now you could use a stability ball, like the big red balls we have there on the wall. Same idea. But again, he's having to use his core muscles to not let his hips drop. All right, so this is what we would refer to as an anti-extension core exercise. All right, now when we're talking about anti-rotation, all right, this means kind of the same idea, but it would be like instead of me being able to try to push Noah backwards, it would be like me pushing him sideways or rotating. Again, this is something that's important that's just going to give you that solid foundation. So how we would do an anti-rotation movement here would be when he presses this out away from him, the band is trying to push him that way, or pull him that way. He has to use his core muscles to not rotate. All right, now if you're thinking, well, what if we don't have a band at home? Again, you could use a towel. You could use a towel and do this with a partner, where one of you pulls on it while the other one presses it out away. So that's an anti-rotation press. Another example would be what we call a farmer's carry. All right, you could fill up a backpack with books, and then to prevent rotation, so Wes has to use these muscles all over here because he's got this weight that's pulling him down. So he's using all these muscles over here. It's what we call a farmer's carry. Now, with this, you can, some of us growing up call this like, working outside with your father. But, this is, again, you could carry a kettlebell. You could use just, a backpack full of books. You can change the weight out. But literally, all he's doing is keeping that weight off his thigh and walking. That's it. So, and again, when he does that, this side of his body is working. So you could just literally walk around for 30 to 60 seconds and then switch arms and repeat. So, some of you guys, hold this right here in your right hand. Don't want to touch your thigh. So put your feet closer together. So feel this kind of not letting you go to the side. So do you feel how you're leaning this way a little bit? Can you tell that? No? All right, so you're leaning this way a little bit, which is fine. That's totally normal. So what that means is you're working these muscles right here to keep, because if you let this side of your body relax, you would just collapse to this side. So that's that's just that's another example of just an anti-rotation exercise. All right. So one last one would be, and we'll walk through this one together. We'll walk through two of these together. Would just be a side plank. So you guys go ahead and we're going to kneel down right here. And then I've got a couple options for you, all right? We're going to have some fun with this one. So the first version we'll do, we're going to have the bottom knee bent and the top leg straight. All right, bottom knee bent, top leg straight. And you got your elbow below your shoulder here. All right, now all you're going to do is just pick your hips up. All right, feel that on the bottom side just a little bit? A lot or a little? All right, not too bad? Okay, cool. So now what we're going to do, straighten the legs out and then come up. A little bit more? All right, so pick those. So hold that position. Now, pick your hips up 1 more inch. And then push your hips forward towards me 1 more inch. There you go. All right, so this would be taking it up a notch. Now, 1 more level here. Go ahead and hold that position. Now take your top leg and pick it up. Uh-oh, now we're getting there. So go ahead and relax. So again, this just shows no matter how strong or weak or whatever, whether you're just getting started, you can do something like this to get better and start kneeling. And then once you can do, 30 seconds, then you can go to where your feet are stacked on top of one another, and then you could progress to going on one leg. And there's a lot of other variations you could do too. But again, that's just a good example. The last thing we'll have you guys try together is what we call a shoulder tap. And so this is, picture that plank that Wes started with, the very first one, all right? And the whole goal, he was just holding his body still, trying to not move. Now to make it more challenging, so if you were to say, well, John, a plank's so boring, I don't want to do that. Okay, well, here's something we call a shoulder tap where we're adding movement. Now, he's going back and forth, but when he shifts all his weight, he has to use his core muscles to not let his hips just collapse. So let's give that one a try really quick. All right, so here's the challenge for you. All right, come up and tap your shoulder and see if you can hold it for 3 seconds before switching to the other side. Hold it for 3 seconds before you switch to the other side. All right? That's good. Now, when you do that, when you switch sides, try not to let your hips move at all. Don't let your hips move. Yep. Don't let your hips move when you're going side to side. If you really think about keeping your hips still, that's going to make it a lot more challenging. So on something like this, I would suggest doing like 10 on each side. Just back and forth. That's great. Cool. So again, if this is something that you're wanting to do, whether it's at a gym or at home, if you only did the warm-up and then these 6 exercises, and you can get a lot more complicated than that, but if you only did that, that would be an amazing step in the right direction. So, and again, all this stuff, you don't even, is equipment nice? Sure, absolutely. Does it mean you could do more things? 100%. But it's not necessary. You don't have to. And again, that's the whole goal. I want everyone to understand that, like I said, you don't need a full gym necessarily in order to get some benefits from this. So the last thing that I was going to mention, and this is a slightly different topic, but I did just want to touch on it really fast, was the idea of power training. All right? And again, this is something we're not going to really get into, but power training will especially help with your cycling from an energy system development standpoint. So it will help your performance. Now again, that's not something, we don't have enough time to really get into this a lot, but I did want to mention it because it is important. So again, if we're talking about just the foundations of strength training, again, I would say the strength training is going to help you more from a very basic fundamental level, but doing some power development, which is basically, think of it just lifting weights very, very fast in a simplified, if you really want to oversimplify it a little bit. But just it's really training your body to move quickly. But by doing this, like I said, that would also help. I just wanted to mention it, but again, we're not going to really get into it, but a little bit of power training can go a long way based on your equipment. And again, you don't need a ton of equipment at all for this either. All right, so this is some very, very basic recommendations, and I'm going to send, and again, you can, on this last slide, you can have all this stuff if you want it, to really simplify things just getting started. And that's the whole goal is I want to help you guys to really just take those first steps. How much should you do? How often do you need to work out? Do you need to work out every day? No. 2 to 3 days a week of doing this stuff will help you out a ton. How many sets, how many times, how many planks do you need to do? How many times do you need to do lunges? 3 to 5. If you've been working out regularly, you could do a little bit more. If you haven't been, I would say just start with 3. Again, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be too crazy. How many repetitions of each exercise do you do? As a general rule of thumb, 6 to 15 is a great place to start. So, and how often should you, or how long should you rest in between? Now, there's one exception that I'm going to mention. It would be about a minute, minute and a half. So if you're thinking about it, you go do a set of an exercise, take your time, wait a minute, and then go do something else. So, and what I'm talking about is what we recommend, which will just help improve your efficiency, is what we call supersets or non-competing supersets. So if you think about the 6 different exercises that we did, I would suggest pick 2 and do them together. So you do the push-up, and then you go do a set of squats. And then you go back and do a set of push-ups, and then you go back and do a set of squats. And then you do a set of push-ups, and then you do a set of squats. There's your 3 sets of each. And then you pick 2 new exercises. And you do your deadlifts, and then your rows. And deadlifts, rows, deadlifts, rows. And then you pick your last 2 exercises. Because remember, we've got 6 different movement patterns. So how should you pair them up? It doesn't make a huge difference. I would just say, don't do your 2 lower body exercises together, don't do your 2 upper body exercises together. As long as you do that, you're fine. So, but putting it all together, it really is as simple as 4 steps. So start with a warm-up, and then pick one exercise for each primary strength training pattern. Again, we went through those, and you can download them if you want on this next slide, and then pair up the exercises. And then last but not least, just follow the guidelines as far as, 2 to 3 sets, 6 to 15 repetitions, and just going back and forth. So, clear as mud? So, all right, so who's working out tomorrow? You guys already warmed up? We can work out right now.